It's been 3 weeks since my last devlog, and I spent about 2 of those just getting back to where I was before porting to C++, fixing things, bringing over more and more pieces of code to the native side, and in the process thinking about how I might do things a little bit differently to make things better. Since I'm rebuilding things anyway, I figured I would take this opportunity to make a lot of changes. And in fact, pretty much every part of the game has had some significant changes. So I'm going to do this video in 3 parts. First, I'll go through a tour of what's new and what's different. Then I'll talk a little bit about GDNative, and finally I'll share a tentative roadmap for how this game is going to get from here to completion. It turns out I'm really bad at explaining and playing at the same time, so I'm going to be doing a lot of cuts here and probably stumbling a lot. I've added an option here for an experimental advanced control scheme, which gives you a different mouse button for dragging food versus equipment. In trying to make it easier to grab sparse foods that only have a few pixels, I've unfortunately made it more difficult to pick up the plates with food on top of them. Instead of dragging the plate, I drag the food off of the plate. So this is one possible solution to making that easier, but I'm going to turn this off for now because I'm not used to it yet and I keep pressing the wrong button. The challenges are now semi-procedural, but for now there's only one type, which is very simple. It picks 1 to 3 ingredients at random and judges you based on how much of your finished dish is made from those ingredients. Now in the kitchen, a lot has changed. I've added a notebook that gives you a summary of the challenge criteria, and I've completely revamped the cooking simulation, including a first draft of liquids. You can move liquids around using the pipette. Procedurally generated reactions also have randomized color changes, so after searing the steak for a while when I flip it, you'll see that it's changed color. And some of the fat has also melted out. Different substances will melt at different rates, and at different temperatures. Actually, let me show you a clip from an earlier build where I had a much more interesting color change, and I've actually reined in the maximum ranges since then, but this is all still subject to change. The particulator has also had some changes. It now blends in a radial motion. Oh no! Oh no, it's crashed! Okay, obviously I've got some bugs to fix still, but let's continue with a new game. Here you can see I've got a different set of ingredients and a different challenge. Maybe now would be a good time to show you the hotkeys. The ingredients are mapped to the numbers, and the equipment are mapped to the top row of letters. So I can quickly place down 3 pans just by pressing Q 3 times. Then I can add 3 Pethalou steak by pressing 1 3 times. Finally, P is reserved for plates. And by request, I now make the plates snap into place once you place them somewhere within the serving area. And I think my steaks are done. Now right now the judging is somewhat incomplete. I'm planning on having 3 parts: personal preferences, universal rules, and challenge criteria. Right now they're only looking at the challenge criteria, so all they care about is that my dish is primarily composed of Pethalou steak. And I'm actually not sure why I didn't score 100% on this. After judging, there's the results screen, which has also been revamped. It doesn't show the rankings until it gets to the point in the dialogue where it announces who won. Each contestant also now has a portrait image, and experimentally I'm including a quote from the judges, but in the future I might try procedurally naming the dishes and allowing the player to name their own. One of the biggest new changes is you can now play through an entire season of 15 challenges, as long as nothing crashes, with dialogue reflecting the decreasing number of players, whether or not someone's been saved from elimination by winning a previous challenge. And because right now I'm only being judged on the ingredient content, I'm just zooming through this in a little bit of a montage. Of course that will change in the future, and you will need to actually cook to get a high score. But despite just slapping ingredients on the plates as quickly as possible, I haven't had to wait on NPC dish generation even once, because it's a lot faster than it used to be. And I seem to have crashed again before getting to the end of the season. So clearly I have some things I need to fix before I put out my next prototype. So now let's talk a little bit about GDNative. I've been using it for around a year on cargo defense, but I'm still learning new things, so I wanted to share those with you. First off, I realized finally that the order in which you register your classes matters if you're using subclasses. This probably should have been obvious, but I didn't realize that registering my subclass first would mean it would not inherit the exposed properties and methods of the superclass. I've also mentioned before that sometimes calling into a GDScript function using the call method will not work as expected, and I have to use call v instead and package all my arguments as an array. Well, the simple pattern to this seems to be that if one of the arguments is an array, that's when it gets confused. And this doesn't seem to be by design based on the documentation, but it's easy enough to work around. Debugging with Godot and GDNative is kind of a pain because sometimes the process will crash without triggering just-in-time debugging, even though I have that configured and most of the time it works. I think that sometimes exceptions are being caught by the engine and suppressed, and I'm not able to figure out what's going on there unless I attach a debugger before the problem occurs and I'm able to catch it that way. I haven't quite figured out the pattern to this. It seems like it happens more often when running code on a separate thread from the main thread, but not always. My latest mystery is actually an access violation when creating an image resource, which is strange because the same code path had been running thousands of times successfully before the failure. I wasn't passing any different arguments, I wasn't passing any pointers that could have become invalid, so the only theory I had is that perhaps it was running out of memory or something because it had generated so many images previously. Perhaps some resource pool was full and it couldn't create any more. So that's why I started leak hunting, and thankfully Godot's orphan node tracking helped me find a lot of cases where I was in fact leaking image resources. Originally at this point in the video I said I thought the image creation issue was fixed, but I've hit multiple crashes and freezes while recording footage for other parts of the video, so I'm not sure anymore. It seems like everything that's going wrong is tied to the NPC dish generation on a separate thread, but I'm not sure what's going wrong yet, and multi-threading issues are notoriously difficult to debug, so this could take a while. So now let's talk about that roadmap. I've got sort of a skeleton of a game, but it needs a lot of work. So let's say that step 1 is a prototype that's playable from end to end, and that's basically where I am now, but it's missing a lot of content and a few mechanics. My next step is to finish off those mechanics and get the rest of the equipment in the kitchen, and a few more types of challenges. Then I'll also be doing some tweaking and tuning to make sure the challenges are challenging but possible, and basically try to make it a finished game but without the polish. Step 3 then is to add the sound effects, music, visual effects, and any other polish I think the game needs. In step 4 I'll be adding save and load, options, credits, and probably some Steam features like syncing your save files to the cloud. In step 5 I'll be just expanding the content by adding more judges, NPCs, ingredient templates, challenges, things like that. And finally step 6 is to release this as a finished game, but I'll be doing prototypes along the way at each step and taking all the feedback I can to help improve it. So that's all I've got for this week, but as always it helps me out if you hit the like button before you go, spread the word about this channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, thanks for watching.